So today, our first speaker is Ace Rondina. Ace, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, sorry. Hi, my name is Ace Rondina again. Um, well, this I guess a little bit about myself. I just graduated December of this year, which is still weird for me to say. I am currently a grad student at the University of Georgia right now, and I'm going to be getting my doctorate in teaching and business studies. And I am also the marketing director of, uh, sorry, of Image Club Limited. We're a Japanese label that's that focuses mostly in ready-to-wear products and streetwear. So yeah, that's pretty much all you guys need to know about me. There's not too much.
Okay, now that we know more about Ace, we can go straight into his talk. Today, he's going to talk about how the pandemic broke the fashion industry.
Okay. So what we know about the fashion industry is that it's never going to be the same. And what that means is, let's start with looking at some trends that happened pre-COVID. From around 2005 to currently, to maybe till around, well, maybe around 2020, like 2020, 2019, we saw this trend in shrinking retail spaces. Everywhere from around textbooks to everything to the normal person was saying, oh yeah, retail spaces are closing, we got to run online. I'm not saying that trend isn't getting any different, but there what as we were seeing from before COVID, we were seeing increased growth on online channels. From around 2005 to around now, the online retail space has increased in fashion from $1 trillion back in 2005 and exploded to $3 trillion. We saw fast fashion grow. We saw the increase of quote unquote fast fashion like Zara, H&M, and all of these one these systems were called design to floor systems, and this was what is easily called fast fashion. We saw the rise of Zara, we saw the rise of H&M, all of these brands, and we kind of you get to see like how quickly they not only set trends but they followed the trends that were in. For example, I don't know if anyone remembers, but the zipper trend of 2016, 2017, where there were zippers on the side of our pants and our shirts, those were released and placed on the floor within a month and a half of them like going wild, oh, on Instagram and Twitter. And it was one and we were talking about when we were talking about it from a fashion sense, that was probably one of the fastest releases of on the runway to the floor we've ever seen in our lifetime. And then this also comes into fact that there's also an increasing interest in automating that system. As we can see, there's algorithms now within the industry that not only see stuff like, for example, one of the biggest things that I always contribute that to was the athleisure. Athleisure was literally let me tell you how quick this is. Usually a trend in like the fashion world, a fast trend is 4 months. That means someone who's wearing it on a magazine and it goes and becomes a trend like within the space. The athleisure movement was they said was 15 days. Justin Bieber was the first one to be seen wearing a literally t-shirt, track pants, and then some Jordans. You know what happened? Within 15 days, those shirts and were being released out into Forever 21, the H&Ms, and it was selling extremely fast. And this was the peak we've ever seen up to now. Um, if we can move on to the next one, but this all changed during COVID. During COVID, there was a sales explosion, but not in the way that you think. Fast fashion was actually this is the first time there was a reduction of fast fashion sales, and we start to see this trend of Recommerce. Now that's something you're like, oh, I kind of know what that is, but really, you know the word, everyone knows it, resell. Jordans, Supreme. There was a huge explosion of this during COVID, and as someone who works in this market, it makes sense. We're not going out as much, and what is the thing that people are always looking for? Being unique. The shift of COVID has caused this shift to where we as people and we as consumers are looking to be more unique individuals rather than going out. "Oh, I'll buy a shirt from Zara. I'll buy a shirt from H&M. I'll wear it for 3-4 weeks. I'm out." This was we've seen a shift in moving towards vintage clothing because vintage clothing at its essence is something not a lot of people can even get access to. And you know, I'm not sure a lot of you have read, there's a few articles that were shot out about it, but during COVID, vintage absolutely exploded in terms of prices and interest. If we look up Google Trends, vintage was probably, I think they said, was the most searched fashion design on eBay and on Google, and it was the second and third most tag thing on Instagram in the fashion sphere. And the reason why is because we can't have the runways anymore. Everyone who's in that, you know, like couture, like that higher end style, they started looking back and looking for vintage pieces from 2003, 2004, stuff that even at the time was considered like too much, too avant garde. But now we see those ready to wear pieces coming back around because it's, hey, I don't need to make something new. I just need to wear what was way ahead of its time back then. And we see it now in terms of pricing. Like this is the first time we saw a shirt. Look it up. There is a Aladdin genie shirt that sold for $6,000 on a live auction this during this time. And the thing is, it's not a one-off thing. $6,000, that may have been the peak, but we've seen T-shirts, Batman T-shirts selling for over a grand, Joker T-shirts selling over a grand, like all these rare T-shirts, like selling for that price because people have they want to start spending money towards something that they're going to invest in, and it's like they're going to be wearing that shirt more, not only to show like their rather personality, but to also almost as a sense of defiance towards where the fashion industry has gone up to this point. So what does that mean for the regular, like designers, for example, like the Bapes, the the Supremes, all these like these brands that everyone looks to. What has happened is that we've finally seen something that hasn't been done since the 60s, and that's the return of in-season design. In-season design is, for example, as me being in the clothing industry, usually I'd be, or like right now I'd be releasing my fall collection so it's sold by July. That's the norm. Right now I'm not even done completing my summer like designs that are going to be released in May. Like usually what's been happening is that I'm usually selling for 6 months ahead of time, but now because of this I have the freedom to go further into my season and understand and see how the trends are and releasing something that people will actually want to wear and really dictate trends closer to market date. And I think this is going to be a mainstay future in the future when we move further into the presentation. And I think the biggest thing that's going to be happening is this manufacturer to market has increased the most. We've seen a lot of brands really just pop up out of nowhere using this model of demand fashion. So this by demand fashion is this sense of like anyone can be a designer, anyone can make it, and I don't even need to front the money to do it. because I have just team up with these companies to make my clothes for me. Let's say like, for example, like I'm gonna make 10 t-shirts. That's usually the model. I'll make 10 t-shirts and sell them. This model says, don't do that. Get your orders, place them, and they'll get them out to you in 2 weeks. And you're gonna start seeing the shift that if you're gonna start getting into this fashion sphere, that is the way to go to make things happen. All right. And I'm going to go into this next part, which is probably the most important part of this talk. The COVID pandemic has really seen the rise of megacorps. So Alibaba, Amazon, and PayPal have all said that they've quadrupled profits since the start of the pandemic, and they have really cornered the e-commerce market. Um, so let me just put this in perspective. Like I said before, what I say about the current state of the market is that this market right now on e-commerce in total is worth $3 trillion. The potential that can be made as of right now is 27 trillion. There's still another $27 trillion that can be made on e-commerce, and the people who are pushing for that is Alibaba, Amazon, and PayPal. And so, and you're like, oh, what does that mean? Hear me out. Amazon already now is starting to go into pharmaceuticals. They're going into services that you'd like, oh, I'm going to go to my doctor. It's going to go, the way that they're going to be doing it is like this: Amazon service, a place where you can go to buy your clothes, a place where you can go to get your music, a place to go where I can do my banking, a place to go where I'm going to start a website. I have to pay for that. A place to where microtransactions are a norm because they hide the cost, because they front the cost ahead of time, and they are going to take that. Everything from me accessing my credit card, they take a fee. Everything from me going to get drugs, they're going to take a fee. Me going on Facebook, they're going to take a fee. And that's because I you go and do your own research and see more into this. Alibaba, Amazon, and PayPal, they're going into this market where they don't want to be your your new Walmart. They want to be your house, you know? And that's crazy. Like, it's gonna get to the point where, like Amazon can they'll be your tech support, and they'll be your computer. Alibaba is gonna be your fashion marketing and manufacturer, and they're also gonna be your TV stand. Like, and then PayPal, they're gonna be focusing on their banking, but they'll also be in charge of like like your mortgages, and that's crazy, you know. And they're already ramping it up. The purchases of Target by Alibaba to start producing in-house products is already a step towards that, to where a majority of us won't even get a chance to even like see our clothes, but also we don't even you almost get a choice to pick what we want to wear, because that's what's going to be put in front of us. They're expecting Louis Vuitton to be sold on Amazon's Lux network to be within the next year. Something that's Louis Vuitton had never had thought up to that point, but with a $1.5 billion like deal with Amazon, that could become a reality. Like like it put on here, there's an increased interest in taking up the physical space. They want to be in your face, you know? Like this idea that PayPal is going to be buying up, for example, what was this name of the place? It was Dover Street Market. They're putting an interest in that. Dover Street Market is now one of the biggest streetwear suppliers in the entire country, and seeing that PayPal wants in and putting a physical retail location next to it, it tells you where the trends are going to be. Amazon buying Whole Foods and teaming up with a lot of smaller brands to release clothing, that's going to become a thing. And Alibaba, like again, they're buying up stock in Target to release clothes in Target. That's going to become a norm. And it's something, as being a small business owner, and me working for, like, not the big four like clothing companies that we're gonna have to push towards because I'm either going to be bought up or I'm gonna have to stand as a renegade. And then like again, service focused marketing. This is gonna be Amazon and all of them saying like, yeah, this is a place for you to do your banking. This is a place for you to do your pharmaceuticals. This is a place for you to get your clothes. And me, I'm gonna be put to the wayside if people catch on to that wave. And then the expansion into the service realm, as I said before, that's going to be a problem for you if you're going to be starting your own business. You're going to be going into this industry sector because think about the amount of fees that you're going to have to pay to make your business work. I have to pay a fee, for example, to Amazon to pay for my to pay for my clothes to be made. I have to pay a fee to get my website produced. I have to pay a fee to get all this stuff made. Whereas before, like I could just go and find it independent, but that's gonna become harder and harder the more we rely on Amazon. And lastly, is the release of in-house production for these three companies is humongous. PayPal is investing large amounts of money in Japan to to produce and make like very simple like products, for example, just like blank t-shirts. You know, that's a huge investment for them to make, but they said that they see them investing and cornering the just the basics market to make them around $3 to $4 billion, which is crazy to even think about. Amazon, you already see it with their it's called Amazon Choice. Yeah, Amazon Choice like items like that's already a step towards that. Like one day you might not even be going out to get your basics or whatever. Like, oh, it's on Amazon. Let me check this like sizing. That's it. You send it in, boom, it's on your door in less than 6 hours. Alibaba, same thing, but on an international scale. Oh, I want that K-pop jacket. Like I can get that done. Here, you put in the order, boom, it's within you within a week. That is in fashion. That's something that's never been heard of, because it almost feels like the consumer is now part of the design process. And we'll move into the next slide and I'll show you what that means for post COVID. One of the biggest things that we're going to be seeing in the post COVID world, and this is not just me speaking, this is a lot of people, not my own peers, and a lot of people who are even like, Virgil Abloh, um, Deschantellier, like all these higher up designers are even seeing. And this is most, and like, for example, Doug Stevens, in his newest book, The Post Pandemic Reality, he hits on some trends that I thought were interesting, but also what I see, as well as people like Virgil Abloh will think that the world's going to be. The first thing that we think is going to be happening is event focused shopping. And this is going to become this is not only not going to become a norm, this is going to be something that's going to be happening on a consistent basis. What I mean is event focused shopping is things like the virtual flea market. Like, it's an online event, but it's going to be happening in person on on a physical location, bringing in a lot of different um per se vendors to come out and do these events. That's gonna be a norm. We're seeing the same thing with magic. Like it gives consumers a first look at what's going on before. It's a sense of like wanting to be there, and it's also going to become an experience. Experience focused retail is the future of fashion. The fact that the regular person can to be that's not going to push fashion in the way it needs to. That means that if you're thinking about starting a company, the physical retail is going to be your friend, because the experience of them going in your store is what's going to sell it. For like, I think one of the biggest examples of this is definitely round two. Round two has really started to understand this market, where they understand that they want to push people to go to their stores. They want to make it look nice. But when you go on their website, it tells the same story. Come and see our store. Come experience it. And you're going to see that to be a trend. If you're going to survive in this post-pandemic world, you need to start figuring out what experience am I going to give to my clients. And like I said again, like this is going to be trends for the on demand online shopping. Like people want it within the next, if they can, they want it in the day, they'll get it in the day. And that's something we're going to have to compete for, if that means increasing our our mark like our uh our logistics networks. That's going to have to be a consistent thing. And lastly, the last thing that we need to talk about is the reduction of ownership. It's getting to the point where secondhand is normal. The reduction of ownership is normal. What I mean by reduction of ownership, it's this idea like I don't, like for example, like my sweatshirt, I don't own it. This is not mine. This is mine for now. And my thought process is when I'm tired with it, I'm going to sell it again because it still holds on to value. And this is something that we're seeing in the fashion industry, not just because of the whole, like again, the whole re-commerce market, but because people are becoming more like eco-conscious. You know, like I want you guys to really think about this. Go in your After this talk, go in your go and look in your closet. I'm going to guarantee you don't use 60% of what's in that closet. A majority of Americans do not use more than 40% of what's in their closet. And that and that means that we're going to you're gonna not only is it like it's you're gonna see a shift for this, because people are starting to understand that if I buy something that will always and consistently have value, I can always sell it to get another piece that I want to use again. And it's a return on your investment. And that's what I mean, reduction of ownership. It's this idea that it's okay for me to buy secondhand because it's something I want to wear. It's something that's going to be interesting for me to wear for the next season or two. And then I'll move it again to someone else. And then so when we go on to this, we'll talk about some new strategies, what the megacorps are going to be encroaching on. And then so what it means is that we need to evolve. Moving forward, if you're going to be going into the creative space, if you're going into the fashion industry, you're going to ask this one question and one question alone. What question does my brand answer? So take, for example, Nike. What question does Nike answer? The idea of winning and being like my heroes. Nike has taken on this persona of being like Nike. You know, think about what grew Nike back in the 80s. It was one simple and easy topic. It was be like Mike, be like Michael Jordan, wear his shoes, be like him. And that same system is on to this day. What are the things that we look for when we go and buy stuff from Nike? I want to be like Off-White. I want to be like Virgil Abloh. I need his shoes. I need Nike. You know, that's not going to go away. That's the question they answer. Let's move on to another brand, Dyson. What question does Dyson answer? True innovative products. I want to be at the forefront of innovation. I buy Dyson. You know, like we can keep going. I'll give you one more example. Is this? What does Walmart answer? And they say it everything. Where prices are easy. Everything's there at a lower price point than what it's going to be. And as you going into the fashion industry, that is the same question you're going to be asking to evolve, because you're going to have to take on an archetype. You're going to have to give the people experience. You know, like if you're going to be in fashion, you're everything from your online to your retail location is your marketing. Before, the way I explain it is this. Before before the pandemic, it was a call for people to come to the website and come to the stores. right? Now, the evolution of fashion is this: what I post online is my marketing. You're seeing, for example, everyone knows OTV, right? OTV, Saikuno and all of them. They don't seem like a marketing network, do they? But they're actually one of the most popular marketing networks for brands like Puma, for brands like, you know, like like that's crazy to think about. Like, and you know who's in charge of that whole thing is Virgil Abloh. Offline TV was his idea. Like, he spoke about it recently at his thing, and he said the way he sees it is that fashion is in this industry to where we're not going to be dressing people anymore. We're shaping thoughts and we're making people think. And that's the whole point. OTV is his first movement towards that. And you're going to see a lot more stuff in that OTV sphere. OTV is just the beginning. For him, he sees, you know, we're not going to be seeing, like, of course we're going to see things, but everything from, the sphere of me going out to the mall, that's going to become an experience for me to connect to people, to things that I didn't even know were connected. Like OTV is the first step to that. Like, and the fact that Virgil Abloh was on this wave back in 2018, it's just going to get even bigger. Um, when you get a chance to, if you guys I don't know if you guys know what Clubhouse is. When we get on Clubhouse, as of right now, he is an open forum to where you can just listen into him talk and to people, and you can ask questions in that sphere. If you're gonna evolve, get on Clubhouse, start learning what people are talking about. And this is the same thing when I said my second point is changing the approach to media is because everything you do is gonna be media. You know, my me opening a store, that's my media. Everything I say in the store is my media. My posts are not going to be come to the store. It's going to be, let me tell you my story. you know Let me tell you why this is interesting. Let me tell you why this is innovative. And for me, you have to find and figure out what your niche is. For example, for me, um I'm huge into Japanese urahara fashion, right? Street, like, you think it's like, I think if you hear urahara, you're gonna think of neighborhood, you're gonna think of Bape, you're gonna think of like all these like Japanese brands that if you weren't into that sphere you wouldn't know. For me, my niche grabbing is that I love skating and I love being into that type of fashion sphere. So for me, when I'm starting my own like label called Heart of Tokyo, it's an homage to Japanese street culture with an American twist. And like when I say niche grabbing, it's something that people wouldn't think is has an interest in until you see the silhouettes. As Americans, our biggest thing is that we love silhouettes. You know, really think about what you've been wearing for the past few years. If you're really into fashion, if you follow trends, there's no different to what you wore yesterday to what you wore 6 years ago because you enjoy silhouettes. And I need you, like, it kind of goes into like, I don't know, I can't really go into it too much or it's going to take too long, but to really get into it, um me wearing a sweatshirt and pants is the same with me wearing a workman jacket and pants, because you're enjoying that same silhouette of top bottom. And like if you're going to start making your own company, you have to start thinking about that niche and looking at what your silhouettes are going to be. The next thing we need to focus on is design centric fashion. This means that, like I said before, consumers are becoming the beginning of fashion, you know and to stand out, you need to have your designs talk for you. What does that mean? Is that, for example, like, think about, like, in this photo alone, think about what Billie Eilish is wearing, from mask to, everything about her. It's it has a saying, and that she wants to rebel, and that's her branding. Her design and what she picked and chose to wear mediates everything. It shouldn't just be, if you're starting a brand, you shouldn't just be releasing a shirt. You should be releasing a whole outfit now to show what your brand's about, and you move forward in that direction. And then, like I said before, like with OTV, there's going to be a shift from driven, like fashion driven media to to experience driven exposure. So what you're going to be seeing in the next couple of years is everything from your house is going to be designed, you know. uh just so we don't go into it too much, for example, I think just look into it when you get a chance to. Bear bricks is going to be a norm. Look, when you start seeing stuff, it's not going to be normal for you to be wearing that shirt, but you're going to be seeing bear bricks in your house. You're going to see fashion labels start producing like Gucci matches, Louis Vuitton, like table runners. That's going to be the norm for the future, and it's time, if you're going to be going into this, to start looking into that type of field. And we'll go into the last part. And so I just want to address this really quick if you're new. So learn your craft, like whatever it is that you do, learn it. You know, if you're interested in making toys, learn to make toys and keep your mind open, because that's where a lot of fashion designers started. Just for example, like Jackson Wang, the producer of Wang Productions, he started off making toys and now he has his own label out in New York. Take inspirations from your surroundings. Uh, the like what I mean by this is that Kelly Nguyen, she's a nurse. You know, this is crazy. Kelly Nguyen was a nurse during the pandemic. 6 months later, where is she now? She's designing in San Francisco, $1.7 million company. You know what she makes? She started off with making scrubs, and she transitioned over into the fashion sphere. Things like this happen, you know. You have to like hyper focus on certain aspects of your design. What does that mean? If you're into rap, you know, don't just focus on like, you know, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna put like my favorite rapper on a t-shirt, you know. See what they're wearing, see the silhouettes, and really study into how you can implement that into your own fashion sphere, or creating a narrative of that. Go into buy demand fashion. Me myself, like I think that's the greatest way to move. If you want to start growing your brand, go buy demand. Like, you know, like make us a few designs, have people order it, and sell as much as you can. And again, make an experience with how you do it. And the last thing is copy to inspire. Everything that we see now, everything from our fashion that we see, is the same thing that we were looking at 20 years ago. There's nothing different from how we dressed back in the 90s, is because that type of stuff is what's interesting again. Copy to inspire doesn't mean, you know, oh yeah, I'm going to take the Supreme logo, I'm going to make it the same. You know, that's not what I mean. What I mean by that is go and look at what you think is interesting back in the day. Go out and look for magazines from the 90s, from the 80s. There's things in there you're gonna be like, whoa, I didn't even know they made this. And the biggest example of this is Emily on Dior. Literally, how they designed their new shoe. They found a New Balance from the 70s and remade it for the common day. And like this is what I mean, copy to inspire, because they think it's cool and that's not even in product anymore, and they remade it. If you're going to be in the fashion sphere, we have this is when you know, we're told be creative, but being creative doesn't need to be making the next new thing, but rather looking at the past and innovating how those things can be pushed for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ace, for that insightful presentation. I feel like I learned a lot. I definitely observed the phenomenons happening in like the TikTok space as well, like how fast trends are changing, and like the growth of re-commerce in spaces like Depop, Instagram, or independent brands, like people just like redesigning and thrifting. The pandemic closed many doors, but you really highlighted like the doors that opened in fashion. If you guys have any questions, like hold on to them, type them down, maybe in your phone, save them for the breakout rooms, because we'll have Q&A breakout rooms at the very end. So everyone, please give Ace a round of applause by hyping him up in the chat. That was so great. Our next speaker is Lee. She is such an important figure in ABSA. She's part of BOD. Lee, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Is my screen working? So a little bit myself, I graduated in 2011 with a management information systems degree. I worked at Deloitte Advisory for 6 years, and then I opened up Tea Presso Bar, and that's where I've been for the last 3 years. I guess a fun fact is that I can name all the subway stops in Manhattan because I used to work there quite frequently. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so now we're going to move into Lee's talk today. She will be speaking about how to value yourself and avoiding burnout in the future.
Thank you. So I thought this was a really important topic to bring up, and I know that it is something uncomfortable, but you know it wasn't really discussed when I was in school, and I wish it was. And because of that, I had a lot of hard lessons, and I definitely observed that, like through my colleagues, a lot of stories, like I've seen it in so many different industries where people kind of like work a couple of years really, really, really hard, and then they just burn out because they worked so hard. And so I just want to have this presentation so that, and I know your careers haven't started yet, but you are in school, like you're still working hard towards something, like as if like trying to find a job. And so I think it's still applicable to this moment, and I want to, you know, kind of like forewarn you, kind of like really what the corporate world is about, I guess from my perspective. So this first slide, I thought this was good to share with you. Like I want you to see it and really take it in. Like you deserve to be valued. You deserve to be respected, appreciated, and treated with dignity. And it's not like in my career, I was never valued or I was never appreciated, but I feel like jobs have a lot of requirements, and it's up to you to say yes or no to them. And if you end up saying yes too much, then that's where you burn out. But how do you know when to say yes or not? You know, how do you start, I guess, respecting yourself in order to figure out what your boundaries are like, and then and you adjust kind of like your work behavior based on what your personal needs are. So you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So I want to show that research confirms when people have a clear set of values, it's easier to make big decisions around pursuing passions, long-term career goals, and relationships. And this is kind of what I wanted to get into. Once you define what your values are, then you're able to kind of manage what your lifestyle is going to be. So it doesn't have to be work, 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 and then at the end of the day, you end up regretting a lot of your decisions. So like there's also a lot of research for like elderly people on their deathbeds, and they're like, what is the one thing you regret? And almost every single time that person has said, I wish I had time to like spend with my family. I wish I had time to do this. I wish I did things that I didn't do because I was busy working. So I want you guys to really just think about that for a moment, and then imagine like what your future could look like, knowing this. So with a clear set of values, you're also less likely to engage in destructive thought patterns, especially in difficult life situations. So with your values, you can then kind of determine, you know, this situation is really hard for me right now, but is my life over? You know, when you have values and then you want to stick to them, you can then be like, well, that sucks, and then kind of let it go, you know, versus kind of honing on it and then just hanging on to it and not really moving on. And so therefore you're getting stuck in kind of like a situation where you shouldn't be, and you should be able to move on from that. Also, having a clear set of values give you greater self-discipline to focus when you're studying or working. So whenever you, yeah, let that negative energy go. Exactly. When you have a greater, I guess, like sense of self, then you can make decisions based on that. And you're like, all right, well, study, you can be like, studying for this class will get me an A. And in order to get this, in order to get a job, then I would probably try to have like a good GPA, And so every decision that you make, you're then like, oh, these are kind of what I want to do. And so therefore this decision will help get me there. And lastly, having a clear set of values allow you to have stronger social connections. And so kind of just like, I know I'm definitely speaking for myself as well. Like sometimes I'll go to events and I'll just show up and I'm like, all right, well, I'm not really sure what I'm doing here. I don't really have a sense of purpose for going to this event, but I know that I need to be here so for example, it could be like an ABSA event because you're not really sure what you're doing there. Or like for me, like a work happy hour when I was at Deloitte, or we have these things called like day in the office, and you're supposed to come in and network. And I'm like, well, okay, well, I'm here, but I don't really I'm scared to talk to people because I haven't really seen anybody because I travel for work a lot. And so it's kind of like hard when, especially for myself, like I'm naturally an introvert. My background, I grew up I immigrated here when I was 5. And so I didn't really have a lot of kind of like the foundations of how to make friends or how to like interact with a lot of people because, traditionally Asian people, like you have to stay home a lot, you take care of your siblings, things like that. So I didn't have a lot of opportunities to kind of build social skills. And so it was really tough for me to like network at Deloitte because of that. You can move on to the next slide. So this presentation is really about like values. And so I wanted to kind of walk through how to define your values. Because in order to value, in order to like, I guess, ask for respect or ask to be appreciated, you have to respect yourself first and appreciate yourself first, right? And so therefore it starts within. So how to define your values, you can, and honestly, this is pretty hard because you have to really sit there and think deeply about yourself. So some questions that may help is like, what inspires you to take action? So like, for example, like in news right now, like when you watch something, how does that make you feel? And does it like make you want to then donate to something or like contact a representative to do something about that? Like does something in the news or something in your life create you to like make initiative? So another question is like, when do you feel most like yourself? So I know, especially in like a social situation or like an organization or like a business, everyone in that institution makes up the culture. And so it's really easy to then enter in an institution and then kind of just lose yourself in that culture. So for example, like at Deloitte, most people were basically like well off, and their families had like a beach house somewhere, or like this weekend they're vacationing somewhere, or it was just like a totally different lifestyle than I've ever imagined. And I never even thought like there could be a career where I would fly somewhere every single week to work there. So like the entire new scenario was like presented to me, and it was so easy to then like sit there and just feel so uncomfortable, because I wasn't used to anything. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew like I had this work, and so I'm just going to keep my head down and work. Because traditionally, for Asians, we're kind of taught to like keep our head down and just don't say anything, work really, really, really hard, and then it will just like automatically get recognized. But in the corporate world, it really doesn't work that way. You have to be outspoken. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to be your own champion. And how do you do that in an environment where you don't really know yourself and you're trying to assimilate too much, And so going back to my first slide, like that's what I mean by you deserve to be respected. You deserve to be appreciated, because if you don't believe that, then it probably won't happen. People will walk over you. People will give you too much work because all you're saying is yes, yes, yes. And therefore that's how people burn out. Like you're going to look back and be like, oh, I really wish I went to that wedding, or I really wish I went to that birthday party. I really wish I made these memories, but instead I just worked through them, you know? And I have a lot of examples of that, and not just for myself, but a lot of like my colleagues that I've witnessed personally. So the next question is the next step in defining your values is identify the times when you were the happiest, most proud, most fulfilled, or satisfied. So these questions will help you figure out like what is important in your life. And when you identify values, then therefore it really helps you make decisions. So when you make each decision, you're then aligning with your values. And so you feel better as a person because you're like, okay, well, what I just like signed up for, or what I said no to, didn't really add much value to my life, you know? And so therefore I'm going to feel good about it, I guess. I'll give you an example later. And so the last thing that I want to share is allow yourself room for grace. And so you're not, even if you align your values, you're not going to be 100% perfect. You will accidentally say accidentally say yes to stuff, overwork yourself. You're going to have like moments where you have to compromise a lot because, you know, you're working in a team, there's a deadline, things like that. And so you're not going to be perfect. And so like, don't beat yourself up if you like said something that you regretted later because it didn't align with your values perfectly. And so like, some examples of values are like, you think adventure is really important to you. You really appreciate friendships. You like when you're independent, you feel alive, you know. These are several things that I thought were good examples of values so that you can have something to start with. Or like fitness, like you really value working out, and so therefore you're going to reserve an hour of your day every week in order to get that accomplished. Okay, so next slide. Thank you. So working with your values. So I accidentally went over some of these, but like, how does that look like in the workplace? So I want you to remember that time is the most valuable commodity. Like, let's say you're in a terrible situation and like you lost your job, you lost your housing, you're negative in dollars, like you're in a lot of debt, you're in just this horrible situation, but you can always work towards getting that back. You can purchase a new house, get a new job. There's always hope for that. The time that you lose is gone forever. It's the only thing that's always gone forever. And so while you're in this young age and you're very impressionable, I just really want you to think about this as you're making decisions, as you're figuring out like what your career or next move is like, or even like your relationships with people. Think about how that really brings value into your own life and if it aligns with yours. And the second point is define your own success. So just because just because we have examples like Bill Gates or Tim Soderbergh or whoever's famous and they worked really, 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 really hard to get where they are and they have this successful company, it doesn't mean that everybody will get there. And it doesn't mean that has to be your goal. And so just because all of your friends are, getting all these like jobs and stuff, and then you're wanting to go this a little bit different path, you should really be confident about that. If it's really, really what you want, not everyone's going to have the same path. Not everyone's going to have the same jobs. And don't compare yourself to anybody else because everybody's values are different. And so therefore it's not like an accurate comparison, if that makes sense, because it's like apples to oranges. you know? So the next point is establish your boundaries. So that kind of looked like, let's say you're vegetarian and the whole team goes to a steak dinner and it's like a Brazilian steak dinner, so it's endless meat, and you're like, okay, well, I want to go to this team dinner to network and talk to partners and stuff, but I don't eat meat, and that's kind of weird because the whole table is eating meat, and meat is like being passed around and everyone's carrying it. So what do? Do I just eat the meat? No, you don't have to. You can be there. Your decision to make these boundaries, saying, hey, I'll come, but can you find me, is it okay that we find a Brazilian steakhouse with a really good vegetarian menu so that I can eat that instead? You know, when you speak up for yourself, then you can put yourself in a situation where like you're asking for the respect. Let's see. And another boundary, I guess, is like, let's say somebody wants you to work like at 10 o'clock, like you get an email at 9:58 and then you have to get this in really, really fast for a deadline or something like that. And then you think about it, you're like, wait a minute, well, the actual deadline is in like 2 weeks. And then you can be like, okay, manager, like, do we really need this by tonight? I have an important dinner with my dad, you know, and this is the only time that I can celebrate with him. Do we really need this tonight? A huge observation that I've found in the corporate world, there's such a false sense of urgency. Like everything needs to be done super, super fast. And then you work so hard to get it done, to give it to this person because you think it's important, because they tell you it's so important, because they think that their needs are better than yours, you know? But it never really works that way. There's so many fake deadlines. And then like 3 days later, they email back, oh yeah, thanks. That happens to me a lot. And so I realized like, okay, well, what's like, I need to determine what's a real deadline where I actually do need to work super, super hard overnight, whatever, or what is a fake deadline that somebody just gave me because somebody just thought of it at that moment, and just decided to put this on me, you know? And so that's a huge example of like how to set your boundaries. I guess learning to say no, the next point, is very similar. So once you establish your boundaries, then you have to, you know, be tactful about saying no, like, because, you know, what I feel like BSing, especially when you get to my level, when you've heard a lot of BS in your life. And so if somebody gives you like a BS excuse, then you're like, okay, well, I've definitely heard that before, you know? And so you don't want to start like BSing at your workplace either, but whatever decision that you're making, make sure that you have integrity behind it. So whenever you say no, make sure that it is, you know, valid, or it is something that you can be saying no to. But I feel like what I've observed is most people just don't say no. And if you've got so much work on your plate and then somebody asks you to do something else, and because you're fearful of, you know, that person not thinking highly of you, or you're fearful of that person speaking bad about you to somebody else, like then you just keep saying yes to everything. And that's when you can burn out so fast. Leading on to that is to listen to your body. So when you literally feel your body shutting down, like there was a point at Deloitte where I would just lose my eyesight a lot. Like I would stare at a computer screen all day. And my eyes just like, it'd be open and then it just blacked out for like seconds at a time. It would happen like a couple of times a day. And I was like, that's strange. I wonder why that is. And so I go to my eye doctor and I tell her that, and she goes, well, it sounds like you work a lot and you just need to turn your eyes away from the screen. Literally, that's like the most simple solution that I can even think about. And she was like, duh. And so, you know, when you're working so hard, you don't even realize how hard you're working, and therefore you like there's a lot of physical consequences of that. Like there's a lot of things that can manifest physically. Like when you're stressed out mentally, your body tenses up a lot, you start grinding your teeth, and then you don't sleep well, you don't wake up well, you're always tired, you might like be moody to your friends. And you know, if your value is friendship or your value is love and kindness, but you're working so hard to where you're unable to really execute on any of those things, you know, you're snappy to your parents because you're so overworked, then you're not aligning with your values, and therefore like it's just not a good situation to be in. So the last thing I have on this slide is challenge the status quo. And so that essentially means think about like what isn't like the structure that is in place right now. Like it could be the institution or like the hierarchy of all of, you know, like consultant, senior manager, or even at ABSA, like we have our VPs and we have our directors. That's one thing. And then the other thing is like the social structure, like the way that partners treat everybody. I guess at my firm, sorry, I say partners, so they could be like a supervisor, a manager, or the owner, or like the people who make up the culture. So if everybody wants to be this way, why is that? Why are things this way? Why does everybody just have to work so hard? Why does everybody is expected to sit here until 8 o'clock until the partner leaves, and then we can leave because of optics, you know? And so like always think whenever you're doing something, think about it with skepticism. And at Deloitte, we like to call it professional skepticism. They actually teach this, and they actually, so every year we have to like write down a bunch of goals, and then at the end of the year we kind of review ourselves and say, how did we meet our own goals? And professional skepticism is always like on a suggested goal list. And it's funny that they tell us, you know, it's funny that they suggest that as a goal to us so much, when if we challenge something, they're like, no, I can't listen to you, I know what I'm doing, you know? And so don't be afraid to challenge what is going on. Like, hey, do we really have to stay here to 9? My work is done, and I have a very important, you know, I need to take my dog to the vet or something. So don't be afraid to speak up for yourself. Don't be afraid to ask for respect, because, you know, you deserve it. And a lot of people, I feel like, don't really hear that in their lives, like that you deserve to be treated well. Like you are not just a number in a company, or just an employee. Because if all of the employees just left and striked, then there is no company. If all of the VPs and ABSA decided like to leave, there is no ABSA, you know? So there is a strength in numbers, but also you as an individual can be so strong and powerful. Because I know personally that I led teams, and I like opened a project and closed a project, you know? And if I wasn't there, then could that project have gone? And a lot of people will, you know, argue that workers are indispensable. Oh, if you weren't there, then there's another person that could have taken your place. But could they have done as good of a job as I did, you know? So you are valuable. Don't ever let somebody tell you that you're not, and don't let anybody like treat you like you're just a number and you don't matter, okay? Like in any sort of situation. And when you define what your values are, then you can kind of start to figure out, like, in this situation, do I care or not? If that makes sense. Please let me know in the comments if it doesn't. But I think that's my last slide, right? And I have one more. Yeah. So this last one. So something that I've discovered, when you say something out loud, it is actually very effective and very powerful. So I challenge you to maybe screenshot this and say it out loud to yourself. Like literally, like just sit on the couch or somewhere alone and be like, I deserve to be valued, I deserve to be respected, I deserve to be appreciated, and I deserve to be treated with dignity. I hope that, yes, positive affirmations. Sorry, I see this popping up. I hope that this was a good understanding for you guys, and this is kind of just like the tip of the iceberg that I've discovered after 10 years of working. And I'm not perfect at it either. I'm trying to figure out like how to say no. I'm still trying to figure out how to not overwork myself. And I'm really and I'm nervous kind of talking about this because it's not something like it's new, but it's still something that I'm trying to figure out. And if I can prevent anyone from feeling like down or kind of more insecure at workplace and like just like as a number, I'll gladly talk to you even further about this, because I've just seen so many people like during a midlife crisis or just so burnt out that they actually had to take medical leave for mental health. I've seen literally this guy on my team at Deloitte was at a bachelor party for his best friend, and the team asked him to come back last minute. He already got it approved. He's like literally like in a different city, and the team was like, no, you really need to come back. We really need you. And so he comes back, he flies in, he's literally still in his suit for this whatever event that they have, and he's sitting there on his laptop working. And then at the end of the day, was that really worth it? Because did they really needed you to do that? And if he didn't do that, would he really gotten fired? My answer is no. I'm certain of that. And so when you set your boundaries and you learn how to say no appropriately, then you're kind of demanding that respect, and you are valuing yourself. So I guess that kind of concludes what I wanted to say here. But please reach out to me after this if you have any questions or you want like one-on-one time with me to kind of go deeper into any of these subjects. Thank you for coming to this TED Talk and allowing me to present.